General Hospital will reveal while Michael was in Germany receiving treatment for his severe burns, he remained ever vigilant, keeping a tight grip on the unfolding events in Port Charles. Even from the confines of his hospital room, miles away from the chaos, Michael refused to relinquish control over his life and his children. His mind never wavered from the central issue at hand, Wiley and Amelia, his beloved children, and their future. Despite the pain he was enduring, Michael's resolve to secure a stable future for his family grew stronger. His need to protect them outweighed everything else, and he made sure that his presence, though distant, was still felt. One of Michael's most calculated moves during his time abroad was to hire an investigator to keep tabs on Willow. The depth of his suspicion about her intentions and her connections to others made it imperative for him to understand everything about her actions and relationships. It was during this covert investigation that Michael uncovered the illicit relationship between Nina and Drew, a revelation that added another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation. The discovery of this affair was not just a personal betrayal, it was ammunition. Ammunition Michael could wield in the battle for custody of his children. He had found a powerful weapon, and he wasn't about to let it slip through his fingers. Though Michael's body was ravaged by the pain of his injuries, his mind remained sharp and focused. The distance and time spent in Germany hadn't dulled his edge. If anything, it had sharpened his instincts, teaching him to stay several steps ahead of his adversaries. Michael knew that winning custody wasn't just about the law. It was about having leverage, and he had found the perfect tool in the form of Nina and Drew's affair. With this information at hand, Michael was more than prepared to fight dirty if it meant securing his children's future. His enemies, Willow, Nina, and Drew, may have thought they were in control, but Michael's ability to manipulate situations was about to come to the forefront in ways none of them could have predicted. When the court hearing finally arrived, it became clear that this would not be an ordinary custody battle. The air was thick with tension as both sides presented their cases, but Michael had an ace up his sleeve. While Willow, trusting in the fairness of the justice system, remained confident that the truth would prevail, Michael had been preparing for this moment in ways she could never have imagined. His team had meticulously gathered evidence, and he was ready to reveal it all. The revelations he was about to unleash would not only stun the courtroom but also shift the very foundation of the case. As the trial progressed, Michael's strategy began to unfold. His lawyers, fierce and unyielding, presented compelling evidence that painted Willow in an unstable light. They highlighted her emotional volatility, her questionable relationships, and her behavior, everything that could potentially harm her case in the eyes of the court. However, Michael didn't stop there. He knew that exposing Willow's weaknesses alone wouldn't be enough to ensure his victory. He needed to go further, and that's where the bombshell about Nina and Drew came into play. Michael's calculated revelation about Nina and Drew's affair was a game-changer. With a steady hand and unwavering confidence, he dropped the bombshell in the courtroom, not only undermining Drew and Nina's credibility but also making it clear to everyone present that they were unfit to share custody of Wiley and Amelia. The shockwaves of the disclosure reverberated throughout the room. Nina and Drew were left reeling, caught in a web of lies and deceit that Michael had masterfully woven. Their faces fell, their defenses crumbled, and it was apparent to everyone that they had no choice but to concede to Michael's demands. Under the immense pressure of these dark revelations, Nina and Drew had no choice but to surrender. They were left with no room to maneuver, no viable defense against the undeniable evidence Michael had presented. In the end, the power dynamics shifted irreparably in Michael's favor. Despite the crushing blows to their reputations and the mounting pressure, Michael's position was unassailable. With a final, victorious push, Michael secured the custody of his children, ensuring that they would be raised in a stable and controlled environment, one where he was firmly in charge. Willow, who had once believed in her chances, was left stunned and heartbroken. She had hoped for justice, for a fair outcome, but the court proceedings had taken a devastating turn. The reality of the situation hit her with a force she couldn't have anticipated. The secrets that had been revealed, the lies that had been exposed, and the manipulation that had been expertly orchestrated by Michael left her reeling. Despite her best efforts and the moral high ground she had tried to maintain, she had been outplayed. The shock of her defeat was overwhelming. She could not understand why things had gone so horribly wrong, especially when she had done everything she believed was right. In the aftermath, Willow's frustration and confusion were palpable. She was left to grapple with the consequences of losing her children, not knowing how or why Michael had managed to outmaneuver her at every turn. Her sense of betrayal was deep, but what hurt even more was the realization that the entire legal battle had been a game to Michael, one he had played with ruthless precision. While Willow was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered hopes, Michael emerged victorious, his cold and calculated approach to the fight ensuring that his children would remain with him, and that the battle for custody was finally over. Willow sat in stunned silence, her mind whirling as the weight of the courtroom's reality began to sink in. She had prepared for this moment, had mentally rehearsed every argument, every piece of evidence she thought would help her win custody of Wiley and Amelia. She had trusted the system, had believed that truth and justice would prevail, that her love and devotion to the children would be enough to secure their future with her. But now, as Michael's ruthless assault on her character unfolded, she felt the ground beneath her slip away, leaving her with nothing but a suffocating sense of disbelief and despair. The betrayal was unbearable. She had expected Michael to fight hard for his children, but what she hadn't anticipated was the depth of his cruelty. She never imagined that the man she had once loved, the father of her children, would go so far as to use every dark secret, every hidden detail, to destroy her. She had always believed that their shared history, the bond they once had, would mean something, anything, but Michael's actions now proved that he had no such loyalty to her. But it wasn't just Michael who had betrayed her. It was Nina, too. The same Nina she had considered a friend, someone she had trusted to be in her corner. The same woman who had, unbeknownst to Willow, been deeply entangled with Drew in a secret, illicit affair. The realization hit Willow like a gut punch. Nina, the woman she had looked to as a motherly figure in her life, had not only kept this affair hidden from her but had stood by as her own son manipulated everything in his path to strip Willow of the children she loved. The battle in the courtroom had quickly evolved into something far darker than a simple custody dispute. It wasn't just about who was the better parent, it was about the painful exposure of everyone's deepest secrets and flaws. Michael, with his cold and calculated precision, had revealed one bombshell after another, turning the proceedings into a spectacle of shame and humiliation. His relationship with Sasha, the affair that Willow had known nothing about, was thrust into the spotlight with surgical accuracy. As if that wasn't enough, Michael's discovery of Nina and Drew's affair added fuel to the fire, poisoning the very foundation of Willow's case. Every secret, every lie, was dragged into the light, and Willow could do nothing but watch in horror as her life was torn apart in front of the judge and the world. Rick Lansing, who had been a fierce ally to Willow, fought valiantly to protect her, but even he couldn't hold back the tidal wave of revelations Michael unleashed. With every new truth, Michael gained more ground, more control, and more power. His legal team, backed by his unyielding determination and manipulation, dominated the court proceedings. Willow, despite the courage she tried to summon, was left exposed and vulnerable. She could feel the walls closing in around her as the reality of her defeat began to settle. She had prepared for many things, angry outbursts, emotional confrontations, but nothing could have prepared her for the psychological warfare Michael waged so effortlessly. She found herself powerless to combat the revelations that Michael had so meticulously uncovered. The court was no longer a place of justice, it had become a battleground where personal vendettas and old wounds were exposed for all to see. Every lie that Michael had uncovered, every betrayal he'd revealed, struck at the heart of Willow's defenses, leaving her paralyzed with shock. What was worse was that she wasn't just losing the fight for her children, she was losing herself. The woman who had once been so sure of her strength and resolve now felt like a shadow of her former self. The emotional toll of the day had worn her down completely. She couldn't comprehend how she had been so blind to the depths of the betrayal around her. Michael's tactics, though harsh, had been devastatingly effective, and she found herself unable to keep up. As the trial went on, it became clear that Michael's manipulations had worked. She could see the pity in the eyes of the court, the sympathy that only served to highlight her failure. She had been crushed under the weight of the lies, the betrayals, and the sheer determination of Michael to win at any cost. In the end, it wasn't just the shocking revelations that brought Willow to her knees, it was the realization that the people she had trusted most had conspired against her. Nina, once a friend, had played her part in Michael's strategy, feeding him the very ammunition he needed to win. Drew, despite his protests of innocence, had done little to stop the storm that was brewing. Together, they had turned what should have been a straightforward custody battle into a personal war, one that Willow had lost before she even fully understood what was happening. Her world had been turned upside down, and there was nothing she could do to stop the avalanche of consequences that came crashing down upon her. The realization of her defeat wasn't just about the loss of her children, it was the destruction of the life she had fought so hard to build. Willow was left broken, unsure of who she could trust, and grappling with the painful truth that her efforts had been in vain. She had been outplayed, outmaneuvered, and ultimately betrayed by those closest to her, and now, with the court's decision looming, the full weight of her loss began to settle in. At the same time, Sasha, who was carrying Michael's child, was facing her own set of challenges. She had already been under immense pressure due to the ongoing custody battle, but when she took the stand in court, the weight of the situation proved too much for her. The anxiety and fear that had been building up within her reached a breaking point, and unexpectedly, she went into premature labor. Sasha's body betrayed her, and the intense emotional strain caused her to lose control. Her heart raced, and she could feel the sharp pains that signified the start of labor. It was a moment of sheer panic. Despite her deep connection to the child growing inside her, Sasha wasn't sure if she was ready for this, and it terrified her. Michael, although deeply embroiled in his own battle for the custody of his children, couldn't ignore the situation with Sasha. The man who had meticulously planned every move in his custody fight, calculating every step for maximum impact, suddenly found himself distracted by the chaos of the moment. The moment he saw Sasha in distress, his resolve faltered. He had prepared for everything in this courtroom drama, except for this. As Sasha's labor pains intensified, his protective instincts as a father kicked in. In the midst of this brutal fight for his children, Michael couldn't help but feel an overwhelming concern for Sasha and the baby they were expecting. This added a layer of complexity to an already tangled situation. No one knew how things would unfold from there, least of all Michael himself. It was unclear how much the revelation of Sasha's pregnancy would affect his custody case, but in that moment, it was clear that something far more personal and emotional was at stake. While Sasha's labor caused an immediate interruption to the proceedings, the revelations about her relationship with Michael didn't stop. As the courtroom buzzed with tension, Sasha's strained and exhausted presence on the stand had become a symbol of the chaos that was consuming everyone involved. Her testimony, which she had hoped would clear her name and offer some reprieve, now served to further expose the cracks in Michael's carefully crafted world. Sasha's nervous breakdown in the middle of the trial was not the only shocking development. The true nature of her relationship with Michael was now on full display for everyone to see. The affair that had been shrouded in secrecy, something Michael had hoped to keep quiet for as long as possible, was now out in the open. Her emotional collapse during testimony only underscored how much she had been suffering under the weight of the lies she had been forced to live with. In the midst of the growing tension, Carly couldn't stay silent. In typical Carly fashion, she seized the moment, ready to strike when it was least expected. She stood up in the courtroom, her voice cutting through the room like a knife, and revealed a dark secret that no one had seen coming. Carly accused Nina of being directly involved in a scheme to drug Drew, a scheme that had been orchestrated with the help of a prostitute. She disclosed that Nina had paid a woman to drug Drew, setting him up in a compromising position that could ruin his reputation. The shockwaves from Carly's bombshell rippled throughout the room, causing an immediate stir. The revelation sent the courtroom into chaos. People turned their attention to Nina, who had been trying to keep her own dark secrets under wraps for as long as possible. The truth about her involvement in Drew's scandalous situation now had the potential to destroy her standing in the case and, perhaps, her life as she knew it. Everyone present, especially Drew, was left to process the shocking truth about Nina's role in the web of deception that had been spun around them all. The fact that Nina had been using money to manipulate situations in order to maintain control over others came as a crushing blow to everyone who had trusted her. It wasn't just a betrayal of Drew, it was a betrayal of Willow, of Michael, and even of herself. The situation continued to spiral out of control as all the players in this tangled mess were forced to confront the full extent of their actions. Each person in the courtroom had to come to terms with their role in the ugly drama that had unfolded. Drew, who had been so certain of his position, now faced the harsh reality that his involvement with Nina had led to far more disastrous consequences than he could have imagined. Nina, who had once thought herself untouchable, now stood on the edge of losing everything. And Sasha, the woman caught in the middle of Michael's and Drew's complicated lives, had to find a way to deal with the fallout of her own part in the mess. Her premature labor, combined with the shock of the courtroom revelations, was more than anyone could have anticipated. As the dust settled in the courtroom, the real impact of Carly's explosive outburst became clear. The secrets had been exposed, and everyone involved was forced to reckon with the consequences of their choices. There were no winners in this battle, only victims of their own deceptions. Michael, Sasha, Nina, Drew, and Carly, all of them were caught in the web of lies they had spun, and now, there was no turning back. The aftermath of this day would echo through their lives for years to come, with each person forced to live with the repercussions of their actions. The courtroom had become a battleground where secrets were revealed, alliances were shattered, and no one walked away unscathed. And as for Willow, she could only watch as the devastating truth unfolded around her, her hopes for a fair outcome slowly slipping away. Despite the intense pressure from all sides, Willow refused to give up hope. She clung to the belief that justice would ultimately prevail, and she remained determined to fight for her children, even as everything seemed to be stacked against her. However, as the battle for custody raged on, Willow began to realize that she might be playing a losing game, one where Michael had already laid out every move with meticulous precision. It became painfully clear that Michael had orchestrated the entire ordeal, using the legal system, his alliances, and even the darkest secrets of those around him to gain the upper hand. With each devastating revelation, Willow's resolve started to waver. She fought with everything she had, but the deck was stacked in Michael's favor, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't seem to outmaneuver him. In the end, she was left questioning whether the legal battle was ever meant to be about what was best for the children, or if it was just another power struggle masked as a fight for justice.